Hello, good evening. I'm Sylvia Carmen Covina, the Executive Director of the BAS, and I'd like to give you a warm welcome. Welcome back to Miami Beach. We missed you. So before we begin, I want to give a really heartfelt thank you to Snapchat for sponsoring this event and for sponsoring the exhibition. For 2 years, we've worked really hard with the team, and the team has worked with Alex. Alex, thank you very much for all the love you put into this show. And I'd like to thank the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation for their support of Curator culture. So I'll introduce Tom Healy, Curator of Public Programs of the BAS.
Thank you, Sylvia. Welcome back, everybody. So let me set the stage for this bright yellow burst of brilliance. And I'm going to go way back 2,000 years. There was a famous Greek poet named Archilochus who said the world of genius divides into two types of animals, the hedgehog and the fox. And fast forward to the 20th century, in an essay that I'm sure Hans knows well, the philosopher Isaiah Berlin explained a little bit about what those temperaments were. The hedgehog sees the world through one kind of lens, knows one big thing, and uses that philosophy. That was Plato, that was Nietzsche, that was Dante, and it was Proust, memory, seeing things one way. But then the fox is a little more furtive, looks around the outside, listens, tests, doesn't let the world reduce into one thing. Tonight, we have 3 foxes on stage. And you're going to hear from them. And I think we are the hen house that is a lot of creativity going to be discussed, things about technology, and it's a hen house that includes pelicans and dancing avocados. So let me talk to you about fox number 1 in the center. Alex Israel, I would say, is Los Angeles and LA is Alex. The shades, the glamour. Just as LA is both a physical space and a dream, Alex lives in the world we think we know and in the world that we're barely beginning to experience, a virtual image, sound, and time. He's a painter, a filmmaker, a talk show host, and a living, breathing font of creativity and cool. Evan Spiegel, as people in every world know, is the co-founder of Snap and the co-creator of Snapchat. In some ways, I've imagined Alex and Evan as brothers. They're both Californians, both restless intellects, kind of look a little bit alike. And they're both shapeshifters in art, commerce, entertainment, and pop culture. Just think Snapchat began just 10 years ago, and its evolution is going to continue tonight on stage. And then there's the man in the suit, Hans Ulrich Obrist, curator, writer, interlocutor, director of the Serpentine Galleries in London. Hans's initials, H-U-O, are actually a name in Cantonese. And they're the name of a very famous martial artist. And I like to think of Hans kind of this way. He was a dazzling hero and with a mind that can somersault, leap, and spin faster than most of us. Hans is a martial artist of crossing the globe, outfoxing the ordinary, nurturing, upholding, and defending artists, philosophers, and oddballs, without whom we'd be all the poorer. So welcome, and thank you.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and thank you all for being here. I wanted to thank, of course, Evan and Alex and Evan, for agreeing for a second time to have a conversation. We started this 2 years ago at DLD in Munich, and it was so much fun that we decided to do it again. And all our thanks go also to Snapchat, of course, to Evan's team, and to Sylvia and the team here at the museum. We also wanted to thank Bettina Korek for bringing us all together. And and again, thank you all for being here. Before starting, we are speaking this afternoon with Alex and felt that it's important to dedicate tonight's conversation to the memory of our friend Virgil Abloh. We lost Virgil, and I just wanted to read a sentence here from Virgil who said, "The world provides waves, surf or drown, you decide." And also remember actually something Virgil told us here in Miami 3 years ago when we had a panel with Terme and Serpentine discussing the future of the city. And Virgil said why our existing world wasn't built like human bodies relate in a more organic way. So he was imagining a different city. And actually a few hours after the panel ended, he had already students at the AA build whatever was discussed in this panel as a model for this city to be built. It was really wonderful, this idea of immediate kind of production of reality. And that, of course, brings us right away to the dialogue of Alex and Evan, which has all to do with production of reality, because it's an experiment in art and technology, where an artist and a technologist decided to produce reality together. And that's, of course, something which has a great predecessor in the 1960s with Billy Kluver, who founded an organization called EAT, Experiments in Art and Technology, bringing over many years artists and technologists together to realize projects which otherwise would not have happened. And of course, this all connects also to something what Marshall McLuhan said when in the 60s he noted the ability of art to anticipate the future. In the foreword to his book, Understanding Media, he calls art an early alarm system that points to new developments in times ahead. He says, art as a radar environment takes on the function of indispensable perceptual training. And that keeps coming to my mind when I experience these amazing pieces Alex has created with Snap. And I thought it would be great to actually begin with the beginning, but before we do that, I wanted to ask you all to give again a very, very warm welcome to Evan and to Alex. And yeah, I thought to begin with the beginning, it would be great to hear a little bit how you met, how this all began.
Is this on? Hi. Well, I just want to say thank you to Hans for being our moderator. Thank you to Evan and everyone at Snapchat, Betsy and Ben and Jeff and Katie and everyone who helped make tonight possible, and to Sylvia and her team here at the BAS. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for your generous and thoughtful introduction. So how did we meet? I mean, the culprits are sitting in the second row. Delphine and Xavier brought you along to a studio visit at my studio, and I remember it was the day before your wedding, and you were so calm. That's what I remember. I just remember, wow, like I would be so nervous, but you were so calm. And then I asked you if you would do my talk show, if you would be on my talk show, and you came and you were a really good sport, and then this project was sort of developing through conversations that we had had and that I had with Ben and Betsy, and it all kind of came to a focus when they asked me if I would do AR for Cannes Lion, which was 2019. We did it? Yeah.
And Xavier and Delphine also introduced me to my wife, so they've done a great job with the matchmaking. we appreciate that. So a lot of good has come out of that. So and I think one of the things that has always brought Alex and I together is that we both grew up in Los Angeles. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about Alex's work and the way that he talks about LA is sort of the combination of the real and the unreal. I mean, that the city itself, and you can obviously speak maybe more effectively about your work, but that's one of the things that's always inspired me and I think lent itself to augmented reality, because in LA, the city itself is always in dialogue with media and creativity, and that to me is something that comes through your work and now through the pieces that you've created here.
And I remember also that actually Alex told me that quite at the beginning, you showed, Alex, really what AR can do. So there was a kind of a seance in the office. It would be great to hear more about that.
We sat down with you and Bobby, and I think Betsy was there, and Ben, and you showed me some examples of what you were doing with landmarker technology, early stages, and kind of, and it was really inspiring, and it sort of got me thinking, and that's kind of, I don't remember specifically exactly what it was, but there were different examples that you were sharing, and we talked about Pokemon Go, and that was like a big example of early AR that everyone knew. And so all this kind of information was just kind of flowing, and that sort of brought us to where we are tonight. I mean.
And Evan, you also mentioned in terms of this collaboration, the camera, and it's kind of, I was actually thinking today about my meeting with Cartier-Bresson, the photographer, many, many years ago in the 90s when I was a student. I met Cartier-Bresson, and he told me two things. He said, I asked him what is a photographer, and he said, he gave this strange definition. He said a photographer is a hunter who is a vegetarian. And then he also said, is actually someone who does something with the camera, what the person who invented the camera wouldn't have thought is possible, in a way. And that's actually interesting, because that's also what the philosopher Wilhelm Flusser once told me, that actually artists kind of do things with tools like cameras, which no one would ever have expected. And you said, when we had the conversation in Munich, that there are so many options when it comes to collaboration, and that Snapchat at its core is a camera. And camera have been used as artistic tools for a really long time. So it would be great to hear a little bit more about your connection to the camera collaboration with artists.
I think one of the really fascinating things happening right now is that the role of the camera itself in people's lives is changing dramatically. So for 100 years or so, people just use their camera to capture and save really important moments, maybe a birthday party or a holiday or a special occasion. And with Snapchat about 10 years ago, we realized that the primary way people were going to use their cameras in the future was actually to communicate and to talk. And so now, people create, I think, something like 5 billion snaps every day because they're talking. They're sending videos and images back and forth all day long to communicate and express themselves. And in the future, people are going to use their cameras really to interact with the world through augmented reality. And I think what's been so exciting about our work with Alex and with other artists is that artists are always challenging us and pushing us to do more with the technology. I mean, I think one of our first collaborations was with Jeff Koons, and he, in order to create his sculptures in augmented reality and place them in Central Park or on the beach, the number of polygons, like the millions of polygons we had to create to get those curves, and all the innovation we had to do to get the right reflections, we never would have been challenged to do that without working with someone like him. And with Alex, it's always been a great technical challenge working with you and your imagination, because we're always trying to keep up and make real your vision.
And that, of course, brings us to these 5 pieces. Alex, you have realized the first 3 ones were premiered actually in Cannes at a festival of creativity. And it was interesting, we spoke today with Betsy, and Betsy said that the collaboration with Snapchat and you has really been each time a different way of using AR. And I think that's so true. None of these pieces kind of repeats what, as Betsy pointed out, what one can do with AR. They kind of show us all a different approach. So it would be great to hear from you more how you developed these 5 pieces, and each time differently.
Okay, well, each one of them is sort of a different approach to the technology. The first one is called Drive, and it's like an animated landscape of Los Angeles. And it's pretty straightforward, and it's basically just turns the painting into a screen. But for this iteration of it, the second version, we've added some more 3-dimensional elements, like the fireworks that pop out of the picture. It's meant to be kind of just like a psychedelic kind of joyride. I live right up above the Sunset Strip, so it sort of took that road as a sort of inspiration. And then the second piece would be, I guess, the Pelican. And the Pelican's more interactive, and it has more of a 3-dimensional quality to it. And the bird flies out of my head, but then a fish flies out of the bird's head. So it sort of like mimics what's happening to me.
And that you had this kind of revelation, no, when you were shooting the SPF 2018 when you were shooting the film?
Oh, the pelican is the animal that I identify with the most, I think, in the animal kingdom. And so I discovered that when I was making my film, and they kept flying into our shots, and then I was like, maybe there's something there. But
Marcel Duchamp plays a role with the pelican. Can you explain that to us?
well, Duchamp plays a role with the fish, because the fish that the pelican coughs up is a poisson japonais, a koi fish. And there's an example of a koi fish which swims in circles in his rotorelief project. And so that's sort of where that fish comes from. But it was also interesting in that example to work with different kinds of animation, to work with 3D graphics, imaging, and to work with kind of flat line animation, so that the fish looks like it's something from an old Disney movie, and the pelican maybe looks like something from a new Pixar movie. And combining those things and thinking about old and new is a kind of constant theme for the work, which obviously tethers this technology to traditional painting. And then I guess the palm tree, we really wanted to do something more three-dimensional. And that's what we came up with, this kind of palm tree bursting through my head like a kind of inspiration. And then there are two new pieces that were made for this exhibit here in Miami. And one of them was we're calling it Painter. And we actually combine real videography, real captured footage of me, and we combine that with the animation. And so we did this for the first time, and we were able to do it for this show. And that was inspired by Picasso painting on glass. So the idea was that with AR, we could actually literally break that fourth wall, or take that fourth wall and bring it into the room. And so why not? And then
And there is a participatory piece. That's the fifth one, no, where you actually, we are all invited to dance with the avocado.
Please dance with the avocado. They really need you to dance with them. And the avocado, the dancing avocado, it was really about kind of looking out at the world, at the landscape, and in digital technology, and what we're doing, and we're all dancing on these platforms. And I wanted to kind of encourage that and to make, kind of an elaborate excuse for us all to make a little dance and post it to our socials. So, yeah. But you can see they're each kind of different.
And maybe to bring it back to Evan, it would be great to hear from you how each of these pieces kind of, push the envelope within the technology, and also how this actually works. How does such a collaboration work with your teams? How was it organized?
One of the great things, and I think one of the most exciting things this time around, and I was just talking with Alex about this, is actually that people's comfort with the technology has changed so much in the last 3 years. So I remember watching people kind of try to figure out how the exhibit worked the first time in Cannes, and now just people right away pulling their phones out of their pocket, being able to scan instantly to recognize each of the self-portraits, and then of course bringing the AR lens to life. That I think has gone a lot more smoothly this year than in the past. And I think for me, the thing that's so fun is to watch the way that people interact. And of course with Snap, they're also making their own videos. And so they're taking Alex's creation, adding themselves to it, maybe dancing with the avocado or otherwise playing with the pelican or something like that. And in doing so, creating something all their own to share with their friends. And so I think for us, it's really exciting to see people's own creativity and the way that they're inspired by Alex's work to make something themselves.
And then of course something which is kind of a world premiere here. It's not only the two new pieces, but it's also for the first time actually the pieces can be experienced not only with the phone, but actually with these AR spectacles. And I wanted to ask you both, but maybe Evan first, to tell us about this experience, because that, of course, kind of brings us very much to the future. That's how in the future, you said before, maybe it will take a decade to really evolve this technology, but that's how in the future we're going to experience it. Can you tell us about the invention of these AR spectacles, how they're used here for the first time, and how you see the timeline kind of their revolution?
Yeah, this is really exciting. This is our 4th generation of spectacles. So we've been working on AR glasses for 6 or 7 years now. There's a ton of research and hard work that goes into putting displays and little projectors into glasses that you can actually wear and walk around. And what's so exciting, the promise of AR glasses, is that you can take the AR experiences you're having right now on this tiny little screen on your phone and actually immerse yourself in them and be able to walk around freely and use your hands and look around, and the way that the 3D graphics and augmented reality are overlaid on the world. This is much more exciting and experiential way to use computing. And some of the early things we've seen, of course, the art has been amazing, but also educationally, walking through a solar system or playing games. There's a new game our team made for Halloween where you run away from a zombie and it chases you all through your house. And it's really fun and very different than VR. In VR, you're shut off from the world around you. With AR, we actually overlay computing on the world around you so you can interact with friends, use lenses and AR experiences together with your friends in the world that we all share. So, we're really excited about the long-term vision for AR. It is going to take a while, I think, before they're widely available. But, we already have hundreds of developers using our AR glasses today and building all sorts of amazing stuff. And they're here so you can play with them and try them out this evening as well.
And Alex, how was it for you to experience the work for the first time with these spectacles and not through the phone? Because you said yesterday that it really struck you and that also you were actually thinking about lots of things. It made you think about lots of things, even NFT.
Oh, well, it was really interesting. I mean, it's interesting. It feels like the future. It feels like a little bit of a glimpse at what how we're going to be experiencing the world in, I don't know, maybe a decade, you said? Yeah. But definitely the idea that AR is like a digital layer on top of the physical world was how I saw it and approached it. And with the glasses, you really do get to experience that. You really can feel the connection between what's happening digitally and where you are and the space that you're in. And it feels like, I don't know, like it's going to be really impactful on how people make things and communicate and all of that. And I haven't made an NFT, but I think one of the apprehensions I have is that I don't know how exciting it is to just experience it on your phone or on a screen hanging in your house. But with the glasses, you can really imagine creating a digital artwork that sits in a corner of your home like a normal sculpture would, that you could walk up to and look at, and it would always be there. And that's, I don't know, somehow more interesting or palpable for me to wrap my head around as a thing that I might want to pursue. But the glasses are kind of the key to that, I think.
And Evan, what about Snap and NFT? Is there a connection?
Wow. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to bring virtual objects to life in AR. And I think that's primarily the way that people are using our tools today in our camera. So we actually have something called Camera Kit, which is a way to take all of our AR technology and put it inside your own app. And we're seeing lots of people who are experimenting with NFTs and with the blockchain take these virtual objects and then build their own application and help people visualize them through augmented reality. So that's definitely a really cool application and something we're paying attention to. I know our team members the other day showed me a virtual pair of AR shoes that you can try on through Snapchat that apparently cost $3 million, which I'm not quite sure what to think about that. But
one thing also we were actually thinking this afternoon could be interesting to discuss, because of course there is one piece we haven't actually mentioned and Alex hasn't discussed yet, which if you haven't experienced it yet on the way in, it will be great for you all to experience it when you leave the museum, and that's the piece on the facade. And it's something you've already done in Cannes, the idea that actually the insides are on the outside and the pieces can be actually experienced with buildings, and that's a great potential, of course, with AR. There is a great potential for public art and also create the contact zone for art where people can experience art actually not necessarily behind doors, no, not necessarily museums. And it's something Edouard Glissant always mentioned when he said we need other forms of engagement. We need to go with art to the people. And AR can do that very, very easily. In Cannes, you did it on the facade, and here, again, at the Rijksmuseum, there's a piece one can activate from the park pointing at the facade of the museum. it has to do with a book, and as far as I understood, a lot also with the lockdown. So I wanted to ask you first, Alex, to talk a little bit about the changes and the challenges you've experienced during the pandemic, and maybe about this piece we haven't discussed yet.
Okay. Well, yes, there's if you haven't seen it, please take a look. It's on the facade of the building. I guess it was in 2020, after lockdown, I was only kind of able to complete 2 paintings that year. And one of them is really a response to COVID. It's me reading a bunch of art history books, sitting in an enchanted forest with nobody except for some little animals, like a little thumper type rabbit and some Tweety birds and Disney kind of animals. And it's animated. And it was really just about being alone and kind of reading and thinking and reflecting. And so we took this image and we converted it into a kind of animated experience on the facade of the building, so that when you walk into the museum, you can see it. And there I am, just sitting on top of the museum reading about art. It's really kind of was about taking the museum and turning it into not just the receptacle for art, but also the pedestal, in this case, for this digital sculpture of me. And it's, again, another kind of self-portrait.
And it's of course exciting because it leads really to a mixed reality, because when we arrived here, all of a sudden there was your piece, there was the museum, and there was a yoga
class, yeah.
Yeah, it's mixed reality, literally. Now, Evan, I would like to ask you about the changing and challenges you may have experienced during the lockdowns.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting and challenging time for our team, for so many people around the world. I think our primary focus was really making sure our team was taken care of, and as soon as we could ascertain that, really just trying to take care of the communities where we work and where we operate, and doing the best that we could. But I think what's been so fascinating is to see, there was all this fear in the beginning. Oh my gosh, how are people going to be creative and build all these new products when they can't actually work physically together? And I think what's been fascinating through this period, it's actually been one of the most innovative and creative periods of time for our business, that people have been able to create and invent and collaborate, including on some of this work here together, despite the fact that we've been physically apart. And so that to me is really exciting, because I think it opens a lot of new opportunity for collaboration, that you don't have to be physically together to create amazing pieces of art or new technology. And in fact, you can work with people all over the world to bring new ideas to life. So I think in so many ways it's been extremely challenging, but it's also unlocked a lot of new opportunity and possibility for our business, for art, for creativity and technology.
When we think about the unlocking of such possibilities, that actually brings me to my favorite question, which is the question about the unrealized projects. Because we know a lot about architects' unrealized projects. It's the only field we know a lot about unrealized projects, because architects publish the unrealized project. It's also part of the competition culture in the architecture field, that we always know about these projects. But we know very, very little actually about artists' unrealized projects, about technologists' unrealized projects, about poets' unrealized projects, about writers' unrealized projects, about designers' unrealized projects. So I'm always asking this question, and the reason is not to kind of keep these projects unrealized, but to kind of help that they hopefully get realized. And of course, the range is very wide of why a project is unrealized. It can be too big to be realized, or actually sometimes also too small to be realized. It can be too expensive. It can be utopic. It can be a dream. It can be partially unrealizable. It can also be just too time intense. I once spoke with the composer Ligeti, and he was in his mid-70s then, the late composer Ligeti, and he said he has another 100 years of music to write. So obviously that was not enough time, so that there can be projects which are too time intense. Then there's of course also censorship can be a reason why a project is unrealized. And as Doris Lessing always told me, there can also be self-censorship, projects we want to do but haven't dared yet to do. So within this enormous range of the unrealized project, I wanted to ask you both to tell us about one or two of your favorite unrealized projects. Shall we start with Evan?
Yeah, let's start with Evan.
Well, I think last time you asked me this, 2 or 3 years ago, my answer was Snapchat, and I think that's still the case today, and actually more so, because I think we now have even more ideas, and we have, I think so many different opportunities in front of us, and for our business and the service and for our community now all around the world. So I think it remains Snapchat. We're working hard, but every day our teams come up with more amazing stuff, and the list of unrealized stuff at Snapchat grows longer. So I'm afraid time will end up being the constraint for us.
Thank you. And Alex?
I was listening to Evan earlier in this conversation, and you were talking about how we all use our cameras so much more frequently than ever before. And it made me think, like, what am I going to do with, like, the 30,000 pictures that are on my phone? And maybe there's an unrealized project there. Maybe there's something to do with every picture on my phone that, I don't know, that I force myself to look at them all again. I don't know.
Thank you both for these great answers. Now, obviously, the unrealized project question brings us also to kind of utopia, and something which has to do with both utopia and dystopia is, of course, another topic widely discussed these days, which is the metaverse. And I wanted to kind of ask you, maybe less to talk about the metaverse, but maybe in the context of this exhibition and of your collaboration, maybe it's more interesting to talk about what's the difference between the metaverse and augmented reality. Because, of course, the idea of augmented reality is very much kind of enriching reality as it exists. And there is, of course, also, there's something utopic, about the idea of the metaverse, that all the platforms could come together, and this idea of world making, as Ian Chang always says, the kind of idea of world making. But at the same time, there's also something deeply dystopic, or dystopian or dystopic about this idea, particularly if you think about Neil Stephenson's book, where this idea actually was born. There is, of course, a company which, in a very monopolistic way, uses this. So there is a dark side to it. So that's why I think it's also dystopic. So yeah, what's the difference between the metaverse and augmented reality?
Well, I think now today people use the word metaverse almost like they used to use the word like cyberspace. So metaverse now just means kind of all the new cool technology coming in the future. But you're right that the sort of root of that idea, or the original idea of metaverse, came actually from a book by Neil Stephenson where he talked about this virtual world created by an evil monopolist, actually set in a crumbling Los Angeles. So pretty interesting idea he had there. Anyways, I think what's really interesting about augmented reality and what makes it so different than virtual reality or the metaverse is that it's actually set in the world that we all share. And so you probably experienced a little bit of that tonight, just looking at the work and seeing everyone else enjoy it as well, and the laughter and the fun that people were having together because they could share that AR experience in the world, in this wonderful museum. And so I think AR really has the potential to enhance the world around us and instead of taking us away from it. And that's why we're so excited about it and why we're investing so much. And I think that's kind of the key difference between AR and the metaverse.
And Alex?
I agree, yeah.
Now, thank you. Another thing which I think would be great to hear you both talk about is kind of John Lason's and Barbara Stevini's idea of the artist placement group. Because obviously, I mentioned initially, the Billy Kluver thing with experiments in art and technology. And the then leading, tech company, Bell Laboratories, had with Billy Kluver artists in residence. I went some years ago to see Lilian Schwartz, who is in her 90s now. And Lilian was like saying, she really for several years had an office, right? I mean, so she kind of came to the office, very regularly in the company, worked with everybody there. It was a very long durational kind of collaboration. And of course, Latham and Stevini picked up this idea and kind of wanted to push it further. And they said, basically, every company should actually have an artist, not only in residence, but maybe even on the board. And so I was just kind of wondering how this sort of amazing collaboration the two of you have can be pushed further. And if you believe, it is particularly at this very moment in time where so much has to do with pivoting, with reinvention all the time, it seems to be a great moment of putting artists more in the center also, no, of maybe at the table also where decisions are being made. I mean, something Mark Bradford told me the other day. He said, you know, artists should have a seat at the table where decisions are made. And that goes back to that idea of Barbara Stevini and Latham, no, of APG, of having an artist, you know, permanently in a company on the board. So maybe we can start with Evan, how you feel about that idea.
I think artists are creating the table and the seat, you know, that everyone else is sitting in, because I think artists are constantly envisioning that future and helping people imagine, you know, what's ahead. And I think for Snap, you know, we just learned this very tactically, because Bobby and I, you know, started working on the business together. I had a design background. Bobby had an engineering background, and it was the dialogue between art and technology, you know, in my dad's house when we were trying to get the company off the ground, that really inspired both of us. I would learn so much from Bobby, and, you know, hopefully I had a couple good ideas that I could share with him, but it was the back and forth and that tension between what was technically possible and what we could imagine together that really helped us evolve the business. And so, you know, as we continue to grow and scale the company, we have a constant dialogue between our designers, all of our, you know, amazing product teams and engineering teams. And I think it's that back and forth from people with so many different perspectives that really helps us innovate and come up with new ideas.
Alex?
I just hope that when Evan is president of the United States, I get to do the presidential portrait. That's all.
That could almost be a great conclusion. I have a few last questions. One is actually very practical, because of course this wonderful project here at the museum will lead to a book, and I wanted to ask you, Alex, to talk a little bit about that, because Tina Rivers-Ryan has been commissioned to write. We have, of course, the conversation from Munich and today's conversation, but you have also lots of ideas how this actually is not going to become a catalog, but is really going to be an artist book for all generations, like almost like a pop-up book. Can you tell us about the book?
I think it'll be really exciting to experience the show through a book, and to imagine using your phone as a kind of tool to read it, so that the kind of AR experiences are there for you, and they pop up out of the catalog as well. It's very exciting. So we're working on that, and yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you both, because Alex and I spoke about music this afternoon, and Dan Graham once told me one can really only understand an artist's work if we also kind of know what music they are listening to. So I wanted to ask you both what music you're listening to at the moment.
Adele. New album's really good. I recommend it.
It is very good. Wait, my wife's into hip hop, so we've been listening to a lot of rap lately. I got addicted to this new song by an artist called Glassio, Glassio, called Queen of the Silver City, which is kind of like a disco-ish vibe. It's nice.
One very last question. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote this wonderful little book, which is an advice to a young poet. So I wanted to ask Alex, what is Alex's advice to a young artist, and Evan, what is your advice to a young entrepreneur, to a young technologist, to a young inventor?
Okay, maybe you should stop and just rethink it and make sure. Just make sure. That's my advice.
And Evan?
Well, after you're really sure, and you know that's the path that you want to go down, I think there's just no substitute for continuing to try to just make progress every day. I mean, I think there's so much in technology. People talk about, oh, that big vision and the long-term vision, and not enough is talked about the everyday steps forward, one by one foot in front of the other, that actually, you know, contribute to making that vision real and possible in the world. So I think it's just about putting one foot in front of the other, you know, working towards whatever vision you have for yourself or for the world, and, you know, I think that's you know, how everything is made possible.
Alex and Evan, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Hans.
And I don't know if you want to take questions, if there are questions from... If not, let's all go back to the exhibition. Thank you all. So there is a question. There's a question here.
Hi. Just kind of wondering, are there any ideas that you have in mind as far as the direction of AR and where you want to take it?
Test, okay. Yeah, so our big focus right now is really on the tools that we can provide to developers to build all sorts of new AR experiences. We have a piece of software called Lens Studio that's a really, really sophisticated, we're constantly updating, that allows people now to build all sorts of AR experiences, but then also connect them to the cloud and to servers to make those experiences dynamic. And we're working with all sorts of different businesses and developers, artists, to try to, I think now there's like a couple 100,000 AR developers, a couple million of these AR lenses that people have made with Lens Studio, and then they can distribute them through Snapchat or through their own application through Camera Kit, which I mentioned takes our technology into developers' own applications, and now increasingly with the glasses as well. So I'd say our primary focus is just on making those tools as powerful and effective and easy to use as possible, and so all of these amazing developers and artists can take them and build incredible stuff, including this great work tonight.
Any other questions? There's a question here. We have a microphone. Just 1 second, please.
What's the difference between virtual reality and AR? So virtual reality is really today a headset that you wear that puts you in a totally virtual 3D space. So if you're standing in your living room, maybe it looks like you're at the top of Mount Everest, but you're not really able to interact with the physical world around you. So your living room is totally gone, and you're 100% at the top of Mount Everest. And the difference with augmented reality is that computing is actually overlaid on the world around you, and increasingly it's contextually aware of that reality, meaning it knows that you're actually in your living room. It can provide you with suggestions or other recommendations based on that. Okay, so it knows you're in your living room, so this is the music you like to listen to. Maybe these are the friends that you want to talk to, and then places that in 3D space around you. So kind of breaks you free from either sitting at a desk using a desktop or looking down at your tiny phone. It puts computing in the world around you and is aware of your surroundings.
Any other questions? Yeah, we have a question here. If you could have the microphone.
Hello. Is there a possibility of forwarding the projects with AR to something more educational versus just entertaining?
This is a huge focus of ours and something we're working a lot on right now. I can give you a couple examples. So there was an artist recently who created a virtual AR reef, so you could go and look at what a healthy, thriving reef looks like, and also what happens with the environmental impact that degrades that reef, bleaches the coral, et cetera, over time. Or we also just had a team experiment with taking Snapchat and helping you scan stuff in the grocery store, so people don't realize, if you scan a carton of almond milk, for example, I think it's about 500 gallons of water, maybe a little more, go into creating 1 gallon of almond milk. And AR can then visualize the 500 gallons of water next to that little gallon of almond milk and show you that maybe you can make different choices to have a better environmental impact on the world. And AR makes you feel that, because when you see what 500 gallons of water looks like next to 1 gallon of almond milk, it really puts that choice in context and helps you change and evolve. And of course, for basic learning, it's way more interesting to walk through the solar system than it is to read about it or even watch a video, because you can see the way the planets turn in relation to one another and how they spin themselves. And so all those orbits, when you're actually walking through it and walking through the asteroid belt, that's a totally different feeling. And I think takes a part of education, experiential education, and makes it much more accessible and available to more people than those experiences really are today, because not everyone gets to go on a field trip or go to a museum. AR can bring that to your home.
Cool.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Alex. Thank you.